Good evening, I'm Ces Oreña-Drilon.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
The biggest story tonight is the Senate putting to a vote how to proceed with the historic ouster case against Vice President Sara Duterte. As we speak, senators are voting on a motion to archive the impeachment.
And the woman of the hour, Vice President Duterte, was nowhere to be found ahead of the Senate vote. The OVP spokesperson admitted that even before today, Sara sometimes runs her office virtually or, like a quote, a ghost.
And the Government Service Insurance System, or GSIS, defends its decision to put money in an online gambling firm. GSIS says it welcomes any scrutiny into its investments.
It was neophyte Senator Rodante Marcoleta who moved to dismiss the verified impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte. Before any debate or interpellation on whether the Senate should follow the Supreme Court's decision to declare it unconstitutional, Marcoleta made the motion while delivering his privileged speech. Marcoleta noted that the House of Representatives committed several violations in filing the articles of impeachment against Duterte.
Ilang violations na po? Kanina po, in-archive po yung tatlong violations. Hindi po ni-refer sa Committee on Justice, pangatlong violation. 6 na po. Ngayon sinasabi po, in-include po sa Order of Business. Hindi rin po, 3 violations na naman. 9 na po. This is an impeachment complaint. You are removing the second highest official of government. Yun lamang pong verification. Sablay na po.
Thus, Marcoleta said what the High Court corrected in its decision in upholding what is stated in the Constitution.
Ang impeachment complaint po ay parang sinaing na niluto ng House of Representatives. Hilaw po eh. Hilaw na hilaw. Kayo po nagsimula ng mali. Hindi naman po sinasabi ng Korte Suprema na kailanman ay huwag kayong mag-impeach, huwag na kayong mag-file. Ayusin nyo lang po eh. Yun lamang po ang gustong mangyari dito. Ayusin nyo. You want to impeach the Vice President, do it in the right way.
Marcoleta even cited his own experience as a member of the House. He did not receive a copy of the articles of impeachment against Duterte and that some members also signed without reading it.
Wala man lang po akong nakita sapagkat ako po hindi isinali sa pakakitaan ng... Hindi ko nga po alam na meron na po pala. Hindi man lang kami binigyan eh. Kaya nung tinanong ko po yung aking mga kasama, kayo pala binigyan, bigyan nyo nga ako ng kopya para mabasa ko. Wala rin kami. Paano nyo pinirmahan? O hindi naman namin binasa nung pinirmahan na. Basta meron lang binigay ng mga signature pages. Doon lang kami pumirma. So hindi nyo nabasa? Hindi.
In his interpellation, Senate Minority Leader Vicente Soto objected to Marcoleta's move, saying that the resolution of the House's motion for reconsideration to the Supreme Court should be awaited first. Soto argued that the reversal of the Supreme Court's own decision is not impossible.
What I'm pointing out is the danger of outright dismissing the impeachment proceedings by virtue of a decision that is not yet final and still pending appeal. We shall wait for the resolution of the MR. Please, let us allow and give chance to the Supreme Court to rectify its decision, which contains clear and blatant errors. For their sake and for the sake of future proceedings, let us not dismiss forthwith. And in that light, considering the motion of the gentleman to motion to dismiss, I move to table the motion to dismiss. A motion to table has a higher precedence than a motion to dismiss.
Soto ended his speech by moving to table Marcoleta's motion to dismiss Duterte's impeachment case. Senator Panfilo Lacson also noted that the motion to dismiss was not in the Senate's guidelines.
Wala tayo pong guidelines kasi wala po sa rules natin yung motion to dismiss. So anong guidelines ang susundin natin in addressing the motion to dismiss submitted by the Honorable Marcoleta? Assuming arguendo, Mr. President, that the motion is voted upon and adopted by this body, what if, Mr. President, the Supreme Court reverses itself when it rules on the MR filed by the House of Representatives through the Solgen? Shall we also backtrack and reverse ourselves in dismissing the impeachment case?
Senate President Francis Escudero, however, noted that in past impeachment complaints, motions to archive complaints was done. And this led Senators Francis Pangilinan and Risa Hontiveros to call for the convening of the impeachment court for the motion to dismiss to be tackled. A move which Escudero said cannot be done based on the Supreme Court's decision. Senator Alan Cayetano then moved to have Marcoleta's motion amended. The succeeding debates then focused on whether the Senate should dismiss, archive, or table the Duterte complaint or a Duterte impeachment complaint, or wait whether the Supreme Court will reverse its ruling. This, Senator Marcoleta said, the latter seemed unlikely.
You are confronted with the unanimous decision of the Supreme Court. In a firm voice, it says this is unconstitutional, void ab initio, violative of due process, and the Senate never acquired jurisdiction over this. And it is immediately executory. Parang sinasabi niya sa'yo, wala ka ng room mag-file niyan.
Okay. All right, right now, the senators are still voting on Marcoleta's motion. And voting right now, we can see Senate President Ces Escudero, rather long explanation of his vote. But what happened, what they are voting for is really to archive the impeachment.
Okay.
Because what, and we will see from the numbers actually, who voted on the Soto motion to table Marcoleta's motion. It's confusing, but effectively what is happening is the Senate will no longer, it appears the Senate will no longer wait for the Supreme Court to take up the various motions pending before it.
Okay, so just to clarify, let's do a quick definition of terms, shall we, Pawi? I will take Senator Soto's table, and Pawi will take the motion of Senator Marcoleta.
Well, first, Senator Soto's motion to table Marcoleta's motion. Explain that.
Tabling the motion according to Senate Minority Leader Tito Soto simply means that they want to wait for the Supreme Court to decide on the motions for reconsideration, wait for the replies of the Vice President and the Senate before they make a decision on how to proceed.
Right.
That's right. But what came before that was Senator Marcoleta's motion to dismiss forthwith this impeachment complaint. But then the motion of Tito Soto to table actually has precedence, meaning they should decide on that first. Kanina ko lang din yun na-discover, na may precedence pala yun. But what happened is 19-5, they voted on it. So what came next is the motion na nga of Marcoleta to dismiss. And that is, he is arguing that they shouldn't be tackling anymore this impeachment complaint because they don't have jurisdiction. He cited a lot of arguments as well, right? Violations. He even compared it to pagsaing daw ng bigas ng kanin. That what the House filed was quite lacking in form and substance. Lots of...
Yun pa kasi ayaw rin ni Senator Lacson, Ping Lacson, gamitin yung term na dismiss because it never appears daw in their rules. So, and that's how they came up with a new word, which is to archive.
To archive.
Which Senator Soto said is practically
Dead. It makes it dead.
killing it. So, based on the vote on Senator Soto's motion, we can safely conclude that it will be a 19-5 vote to archive the impeachment. So perhaps let's return to the voting. Senator Ces Escudero, Senate President Ces Escudero is still at it. Let's listen in.
Of the Constitution as well as the institutions created under it. My dear colleagues, we are told that to honor the court's ruling is to betray the truth, that by choosing fidelity to the law, we somehow abandon accountability, but nothing for me could be further from the truth. To disregard the ruling would not only defy the Constitution, it would drag the nation into a crisis it can ill afford. It would erode the authority of our laws embolden those who believe they are above it because they know it all or simply know better. To those seeking to disregard the Supreme Court's decision, I ask these simple questions, Mr. President. Again, in light of the Francisco ruling on former Chief Justice Davide, and it was okay then because they did not want then Chief Justice Davide to be impeached. Are you truly for accountability or simply anti-Duterte? Do you truly respect and want to preserve the Constitution, or you simply hate the Vice President? Are you serving the nation's interest or protecting and pursuing your own personal ambitions or agenda? Are you fighting for truth, or are you simply after revenge? Do you really want a trial, or do you just want a conviction? Do you really believe that we are wrong, or do you simply think and feel entitled and believe that you are always right? Remove the name, Mr. President, of the Vice President in this case. Apply the decision of the High Court, as Senator Cayetano said earlier, to another impeachable official. Would your positions be the same? When I was faced with this situation, Mr. President, I respected the Court's decision, even if I disagreed with it. I am still voting to respect that Court's decision. As quoted at the start of my speech, Mr. President, the dispensation of justice over the course of time should be unaffected, whomsoever stood to benefit or suffer therefrom. The courts should be unafraid of whatever...
We break away from Senate President Francis Escudero there, still speaking and explaining his vote. So far, Senators Alan and Pia Cayetano, Bato de la Rosa, J.V. Ejercito, and Jinggoy Estrada have voted yes to the motion to archive Duterte's impeachment, adhering to the Supreme Court's decision. While we wait for the final vote of the Senate, let's bring in Attorney Egon Cayosa, former president of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines and a constitutional law expert. Good evening, Attorney. Welcome to the Big Story. What do you make of how the Senate is tackling the Supreme Court's decision on VP Sara's impeachment case?
Good evening. It is good that the senators are discussing it, and the vote is pretty obvious. So, but it is very enlightening and part of our democratic process that we hear them argue and explain their votes. And there were efforts to come up with compromise motions, but it unraveled. So that's why they're now voting on the amended motion. Instead of a motion to dismiss, it's just to archive.
What does archive mean? Because Senator Soto says it is practically killing it, and that even if the Supreme Court changes its mind, although they are saying it is highly improbable, then what can the Senate do? Can you enlighten us on archiving?
Well, normally and technically, a motion to archive is to put it on hold while awaiting some developments. But in practice, and the good Senator Soto would know that he's a veteran lawmaker, when a particular matter or issue is archived, it is good as dead. But then again, the focus now shifts to the Supreme Court because of course, as you say, and many say, it's improbable, but it's not impossible. As a matter of fact, one of the senators was quick to point out a number of Supreme Court decisions where there were unanimous decisions that they themselves, again, unanimously overturned.
Senator Risa Hontiveros did point those cases out.
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
So, it may be a suntok sa buwan, no? Improbable, but it's a possibility, and we await the decision of the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm. Based on the debates, it's several hours long, and still now the senators explaining their votes, what can we glean from about our democracy?
Well, we could say that it's working in the sense that people are free to express their opinions. The elected representatives argue their views, their case, and their votes. And insofar as the Senate is concerned, it's all in full public view. So we can judge them by the way they argue, the soundness of their position, or their particular vote. So to me, that's okay. That's the beauty of a public forum. And but at the end of the day, it's about an exercise of power or discretion. And the Senate is in the process of exercising their power as the senators. It's not clear at this point whether they're voting as an impeachment court, as a Senate, or as a Senate in plenary.
What do you think they should have done, Attorney Egon? No? Because they're saying we cannot convene as an impeachment court. Well, some in the minority rather, they're saying we cannot convene as they should convene as an impeachment court before voting, and then the majority is saying we can't because we don't have jurisdiction, and that's what the Supreme Court said. And then the arguments just stem from there. But do you feel that they are still doing the right thing and just kind of airing out everything?
Well, they could do either way. No? They could sit as an impeachment court and decide, as they are deciding now, to respect the decision of the Supreme Court. But as a plenary also, they can also do that. So it's for them to sort it out. At this point, they haven't agreed among themselves in what capacity are they doing it. But insofar as we, the people, are interested to have transparency, we're seeing it unfold before our very eyes. And that's, to me, that's the beauty of democracy. We hope that the Supreme Court will also be
transparent.
and call for an oral argument, as some of the critics or some luminaries are suggesting, or even former Chief Justices and respected Justices of the Supreme Court are suggesting. We don't know. Again, that's discretionary on the part of the Supreme Court. We don't know whether or not the decision of the Senate tonight will have any impact on the next moves of the Supreme Court. I hope the Supreme Court will focus on the facts and on the law and the Constitution.
You had yourself issues with the decision of the Supreme Court.
Yes, I do. And I've been very open about that. We have laid out our thoughts on the matter, as anybody can. No? But at the end of the day, we'll have to let the Supreme Court rule on it. The MR is there. It's an effective mechanism. The Supreme Court did not dismiss outright the MR, and it, in a way, recognizes because it required the Vice President to comment on the MR.
Can you enlighten us? It says that their decision is final. It's executory, which is why the Senate is voting this way. And yet it accepted the MR and directed the VP to comment. It seems contradictory.
Let's be accurate. The Supreme Court did not say that the decision is final. They just said it is executory.
Okay.
The fact that they accepted the MR and they're acting on the MR, that's basic. It's the right of any aggrieved party or a losing party to seek for a reconsideration, to give the court a chance to correct itself if and when it is in error.
But they said immediately, attorney, immediately executory, and then they repeated it again as they asked for the replies and the comments.
There's a difference between finality and immediate executory.
Okay.
I give you a simple example. No? In injecting cases, it is immediately executory, and some administrative cases, it's immediately executory, but the court can eventually decide in the final decision that it is in favor of the other party. So they'll just undo what was done.
Do you want to use a metaphor kagaya ng mga nanliligaw or yung mga sinaing na hindi nahilaw?
Basketball.
Para mas maintindihan ng ating, alam mo, kunyari hindi kami masyadong... It's hard. It's difficult to go through all these legalese.
That's
baka meron
correct.
kayo, yung executory na yan, meron ba kayong naiisip?
But it's very difficult, and I would rather not do that, no, to make yan na parang, because it will not add to the clarity. It
Okay.
would further confuse our people. Yung
Alright.
mga ikaw na sinaing, yung panliligaw, it's cute. Maybe an attempt to address or to address the massa or those who don't understand legalese, but I don't think it will add to the clarity. So I will not even attempt to.
So yung sinabi ni Senator Marcoleta medyo nakagulo pa sa tingin ninyo?
Yes, makakagulo pa. So I think now we wait for what the Supreme Court will do. Maganda nga na pinag-uusapan sa Senado, and they're acting on it as the Senate. So we'll have to respect whatever the decision is. Binoto natin mga yan, no? Or kung yung binoto natin hindi naman nanalo, so pasensya tayo. So again, the ball goes back to the Supreme Court ngayon kasi may MR. So tingnan natin, let's see what the Supreme Court will do with the MR.
Well, Attorney, my question is particularly on the doctrine of operative facts and why this ruling of the Supreme Court applies retroactively instead of prospectively. And what's the impact of that dun sa mga previous impeachment cases, gaya ng pinoint out ni Senator Tito Sotto, what happens now to the impeachment of former President Estrada, of Chief Justice Corona? Will it also be null and void?
Well, of course, those who would want it to be null and void and, vindicate those who were already convicted, maaari nilang sabihin yan. So they can quote that or they can use that kind of logic, but I doubt it if that would be effective. Again, you need the Supreme Court to rule on those things. So you have to file a case before the Supreme Court and let's see what they do about it. Will they consistently apply the retroactive effectivity of their more recent ruling or not? It depends. But, we cannot also automatically apply this new doctrine to all the past cases. Again, you need the Supreme Court perhaps to rule on those things. Hindi rin pwede. Maaaring, you can use it as an argument. As a matter of fact, those who question the fairness and the serious implications of this much criticized ruling is using that. And you can't blame them. You can't blame them. These are things that perhaps ordinary people can, understand or can relate to.
Attorney, can we go back to that archiving versus tabling? Because I think that's kind of, to a normal person, it may sound the same, right? But of course, Tito Sotto is on the table side, and Senator Marcoleta brought forth the archiving side. So if in archive, we discussed this earlier, sabi nga ni Senator Tito, baka good as dead na siya. And you mentioned because of his experience, you kind of agree with him, but they were arguing on the floor in the Senate na pwede naman siyang buhayin ulit, pending kung anong sinabi po nung SC.
But it was, we were hopeful it was going towards that direction. But if you notice, when the majority floor leader amended the motion to dismiss of Senator Marcoleta, he didn't include the earlier amendments proposed by Senator Cayetano. So,
To adhere
again,
to the Constitution?
yes,
And to the Supreme Court?
Yeah, and depending on what will happen in the MR, then they will act accordingly. Wala na yun, if you notice. Nawala yun. It's just to archive, period.
So talagang, yun na nga, kung manalo na yung archive, which is mukhang, predictably, probably, that's what's going to happen, then wala na talaga. But what if the SC says something?
Well, even if the SC doesn't say anything, assuming, they reverse themselves and say they were mistaken, so they're correcting themselves. So the Senate had jurisdiction. It again boils down to the vote by the senators. If they really want to, they can revive the case and pull it out of the archive and continue. That's very possible. But since they are a collegial body, you'll have to get the votes, necessary votes to do that.
And the 19.5, you can already assume that this is how it will go. This is how they draw the line politically.
It's pretty obvious. Well, of course, we would like to presume and give them the benefit of the doubt that people are voting according to their conscience, their knowledge of what's right or wrong, or out of respect for the Supreme Court, or for pure politics. We give it to them because, admittedly, impeachment really is political in nature, and
But we must clarify also, attorney, that they explained that, they do want a trial. It's just that the process was flawed. Some of them in their explanation of the votes.
Yes, of course, because it's also very clear in the Supreme Court decision that, well, you can file again by next year, February, just observe the 1-year ban and then do it better this time. And the problem is the Supreme Court added requirements to what the plain language of the Constitution is. So that's one of the criticisms of those who are assailing the soundness of this decision.
All right. We thank you for talking to us, Attorney Igon Cayosa, former president of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines and a constitutional law expert. Meantime, here's an update on the Senate vote, voting yes to the archiving of Vice President Sara Duterte's impeachment. So far, Senators Alan and Pia Cayetano, Bato de la Rosa, JV Ejercito, and Senate President Francis Escudero. Senator Jinggoy Estrada was the latest to vote yes to the archive Duterte's impeachment. So that's 6 yes votes, 18 more votes to go. You can see Senator Win Gatchalian now explaining his vote.
Okay, but right now we just need to take a quick break. But coming up, everyone's looking for Vice President Sara Duterte hours before the Senate's impeachment debate and vote. Malacanang says they know where she is headed next. That story and more when we return. Keep it here on One News.
You're back here on the big story on One News. Security at the Senate was tightened after protesters blocked or flocked the area demanding for the impeachment trial against Vice President Sara Duterte to push through. Tindig Pilipinas in particular said despite the Supreme Court ruling the impeachment complaint unconstitutional, senators cannot just pretend there wasn't an issue on VP Sara's confidential funds. The group had filed a motion to reverse the said decision.
Dapat the trial should proceed forthwith upang magpanawagan sa ating mga senador na gampanan nila yung constitutional duties po nila.
Also monitoring the outcome of the Senate debates is the Liberal Party. They reminded the Senate that whatever their decision will be on the matter will reflect where their allegiance truly stands.
Ang pinaka-importante dito sa impeachment ay to hold high officials of government accountable for whatever violation of our Constitution.
Sukatan ngayon ito, noong mga taong ibinoto natin dyan, titignan natin kung sila ba ay para sa pananagutan, sila ba ay para sa hustisya, at sila ba ay para sa taong bayan.
Now here's an update on the ongoing vote at the Senate to archive the impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte. Voting yes, Senators Alan and Pia Cayetano, Bato de la Rosa, JV Ejercito, Senate President Francis Escudero, Senators Jinggoy Estrada and Win Gatchalian, and now Bongo. At this point, let's go back to the Senate and listen in.
Nagbibenta ng ari-arian sa oras ng tinamaan sila ng sakit at napakarami pa rin Pilipino ang hirap makakuha ng mga serbisyo at tulong mula sa gobyerno. Kaya magtrabaho na lang muna tayo. Nabibigyan na po ang Pilipino dahil sa ingay ng politika. Politikang hindi naman masasaing sa umaga, politikang hindi naman pwedeng magamit pambayad sa tuition sa paaralan, politikang hindi naman makapagbibigay lunas sa may mga sakit. Let us buckle down to our work The people expect nothing less from us. Ever since, I am for peace and unity. Nakikiusap po ako na magkaisa na tayo para makapagserbisyo na tayo sa ating mga kapwa Pilipino. Maraming salamat, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Christopher Bongo. Sir Secretary.
Senator Hontiveros.
Senator Risa Hontiveros is next to explain her vote.
Salamat po, Mr. President. Mr. President, I vote no. The 1987 Constitution entrusted the duty to try and decide all cases of impeachment to the Senate. Today, we are voting to abandon this mandate. I reiterate that the Supreme Court decision is not yet final. Kahit paano mo baliktarin. So, make no mistake, this was an act of the Senate. It is our institution which, in the words of colleagues, killed the articles of impeachment. Ang pinanggagalingan ko lamang po dito, pananagutan. Our people must have the power to make the highest rulers accountable. The process of impeachment is meant to question the powers that be and whether they deserve that power. In short, karapat-dapat ka ba? Hindi po dapat mahirap at teknikal ang impeachment. Taliwas ito sa intent ng framers. It should not be taxing to hold power to account. Anything that will make it easier for a public officer to evade accountability should be opposed. Ang hangad ko sana ay matulungan natin ang isa't isa. Tulungan natin ang ating mga kababayan na sagutin ito ng buo, ng may tapang at ng walang paligoy-ligoy. Ma-dismiss man natin ngayon o ma-archive ang articles of impeachment, mas mahirap i-dismiss o i-archive ang daing ng mga tao sa pananagutan at katarungan. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Risa Hontiveros. Secretary.
Senator Lacson.
Senator Panfiloping Lacson is recognized to explain his vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. Without the words immediately executory and the phrase on 25 July 2025, which held, among others, that the articles of impeachment are null and void ab initio and that the Senate did not acquire jurisdiction over the same, I would have voted in favor of the amended motion because I have always maintained that we must respect and not disobey the Supreme Court. But since there's still a pending motion for reconsideration filed by the House of Representatives through the Solicitor General, I believe that the July 25 ruling is by no means final until it rules on the motion for reconsideration with finality. That being said, I would rather wait, not preempt, the final ruling of the High Court. It is for these reasons that I abstain, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Lacson. Mr. Secretary.
Senator Lapid.
Senator Lito Lapid is recognized.
Mr. President, rinirespeto ko po at ginagala ko ang kataas-taas ang hukuman. Ang boto ko po ay yes. Salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Senator Lapid. Secretary.
Senator Legarda.
Senator Lauren Legarda is recognized to explain her vote.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the Supreme Court has ruled with clarity. It declared the impeachment complaint not only constitutionally barred, but void from the beginning, and further held that the Senate did not acquire jurisdiction over the matter. This decision, by express pronouncement, is immediately executory. We in the Senate are stewards of the Constitution and the rule of law. Our fidelity must be strongest precisely when institutions are under strain or pressure. To proceed as though the ruling were uncertain or optional would be a departure from our constitutional duty. This manifestation is a commitment to respect the present authority of the Court's decision while remaining open to its final word. I cast my vote without prejudice to the Supreme Court's disposition of the pending motion for reconsideration. The court speaks, and at times it speaks again. But until it does, the Senate must not act contrary to what it has already said. For these reasons, I vote yes. I honor the decision of the Supreme Court. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Legarda. Mr. Secretary.
In other news, the office of the Vice President, Sara Duterte, appears to be unaware of her current whereabouts, as it failed to confirm where the country's second highest official is. In a press conference earlier today, OVP spokesperson Ruth Castello initially said the information is still needed to be verified when asked about Duterte's current location. This as the Senate impeachment court held hearings on the vice president's case after the Supreme Court ruled her impeachment case unconstitutional. Castello then said Duterte might be in her office but gave no confirmation.
We'll get back to you on that. Who knows? She can just be right in the office. Oo nga, a few steps away.
Despite not being physically present, Castello insisted that VP Duterte remains hands-on with the OVP's programs. She pointed to technology allowing the Vice President to work virtually.
The Vice President is as involved as she started. So, nung re-roll out yung mga programa natin, beginning 2022, up to now, her involvement is the same. Even if she's not physically here, she's still the one running the office. Kasi may technology naman eh, di ba? Tayo lang, yung mga nandito, kami yung gumagawa, kami yung mga sundalo, but the instructions come directly from the Vice President herself. Yung trabaho na kailangan niyang gawin for the office is still being done. Ano lang, minsan virtual, minsan ghost.
And after the OVP failed to verify Duterte's whereabouts, Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said they received information that the Vice President may be heading to Kuwait, but noted no travel authority has been filed yet.
Ay wala po tayong impormasyon, tinawagan po natin ang Office of the Executive Secretary sa ating pagkakaalam at sa ating ibinigay. Ang pinakahuling travel authority na inaibigay sa kanya ay simula July 5 hanggang July 28 kung saan po siya nag-travel papuntang the Netherlands at South Korea. Meron po tayo nabalitaan at ito'y naitanong sa atin na meron daw na balak ang Vice Presidente na pumunta sa Kuwait, no? Sa Kuwait ng August 8. Pero as we speak, wala pa pong naihahain na request for travel authority ang Vice Presidente sa sinasabing pagbabiyahe.
Meantime, reactions continue to pour in after former Senator Sonny Trillanes claimed that former Vice President Leni Robredo is friends with her successor, Vice President Sara Duterte. Mamamayang Liberal Party List Representative Laila De Lima was among the first to dismiss this claim, calling out Trillanes for saying Robredo had been silent on former President Rodrigo Duterte's ordeal. She pointed to Robredo's strong record on human rights and justice. She said, quote, saying no one who stood with the opposition during a time of impunity and persecution could credibly accuse her of going soft on accountability, especially when it came to former President Duterte. De Lima said it is unclear what prompted these claims, but their impact is clear: division, distraction, and disinformation. She stressed that instead of focusing on holding the powerful accountable for their failures and falsehoods, the opposition ends up turning on itself. De Lima's remarks came after Trillanes alleged that Senator Bam Aquino, Robredo's 2022 campaign manager, once suggested delaying an arrest warrant for Duterte out of concern that it could affect her presidential run.
I find the claim difficult to believe. Her public record speaks to the contrary. Para sa kanya, accountability must apply to all. Walang puwang ang double standard sa hustisyang inaasam natin. We in the opposition are not here to fight each other.
For its part, the OVP has not confirmed any relationship between Duterte and Robredo.
Well, I am not privy to that, but you know, if it's true, I'm sure the Vice President will get a lot of useful tips from former Vice President Leni Robredo.
We're going to be pausing for another quick break, but after that, the GSIS finds nothing wrong with its 1 billion peso investment in an online gambling company, welcoming any investigation into the matter. The details next on The Big Story. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us here on The Big Story. President Bongbong Marcos has ordered a 60-day suspension of all rice importations starting September 1st. The president made the directive after consulting with the cabinet on the sidelines of his visit to New Delhi, India, citing the need to protect local farmers struggling with low palay prices during harvest season. Presidential Communications Secretary Dave Gomez says the move follows a recommendation from Agriculture Secretary Francis Chu Laurel. While in India, Marcos also met with Indian business leaders to pitch investment opportunities in the Philippines, promoting his administration's more open economic policies. He was joined by members of his economic team, including Trade Secretary Cristina Roque and Finance Secretary Ralph Recto.
Meanwhile, Senator Risa Hontiveros called for the upper chamber to investigate alleged questionable investments of the government service insurance system, or the GSIS. One such investment, Hontiveros pointed out in her privileged speech, is almost 1 billion pesos on shares in an online gambling platform, which was offered at a peak of 65 pesos and 30 centavos. But now the values of these shares have plummeted to as low as 13 pesos, which Hontiveros insists is a big loss. The senator also pointed to a 1.45 billion peso subscription agreement of the GSIS with Alternergy Holdings, a company with almost no track record and wasn't even listed at the stock exchange. Hontiveros further said, based on a 2023 audit report, the social insurance institution also infused funds to at least 3 other companies with poor performance, which resulted in more than 250 million pesos going to waste. Aside from a formal inquiry, Hontiveros is calling for a possible amendment of the GSIS Act.
In the first place, what was GSIS thinking? Investing funds in online gambling. Tayo nga po, mga kasamang nagtatrabaho sa gobyerno, hindi pwedeng tumuntong sa casino. Lalo na, hindi pwedeng magsugal doon. Kaya, bakit ang GSIS naman todo taya at ginawang puhunan ang pera ng public employee sa sugalan?
In reply, GSIS says, quote, "We welcome the scrutiny and call for public disclosure from various sectors, and we are prepared to present all relevant documents and data to the appropriate authorities." They also assured members, pensioners, and the Filipino public that the GSIS Social Insurance Fund remains strong, secure, and actuarially sound.
And for tonight's Big Picture, signages about human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, are now front and center, this time on the handrails of LRT1 trains. This is to mark this year's National HIV Awareness Month. It is part of the Department of Health's ongoing campaign to destigmatize HIV and bring essential services closer to the public. The DOH is also rolling out activations in major workplace hubs across Metro Manila, offering free condoms, lubricants, HIV testing, pre-exposure prophylaxis or PrEP, and advocacy talks to promote safe practices and early detection.
Now here's another update on the ongoing vote at the Senate to archive the impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte. Voting yes, Senators Alan and Pia Cayetano, Bato de la Rosa, JV Ejercito, Senate President Francis Escudero, Jinggoy Estrada, Win Gatchalian, Bongo, Lauren Legarda, Lito Lapid, Rodante Marcoleta, Amy Marcos, and looks like a yes from Robin Padilla. Senator Risa Hontiveros voted no, while Senator Ping Lacson abstained. So it looks like it's a yes to archiving the impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte. 12 yes votes, 13 if we add Robin Padilla, 1 no. and an abstention, but it was unclear what the vote of Bam Aquino was. He was called, but he didn't explain.
Maybe he
right?
deferred it. I guess we'll find out though.
We'll
before
find
the
out
night.
once they do the tally of the voting.
But were you surprised by the abstention of Senator Ping? Yeah, I didn't see that coming. I thought.
No, you know, he always is a maverick.
Yeah,
He's
wild
like,
card.
He's like the odd man out.
Okay.
But because his explanation was he would have normally voted yes, he said, but because of the pending.
He wants to see what
Yeah,
happens first.
the pending petitions and the MRs and the TROs. Yeah.
So it's been an interesting day, but for tonight, that's it for the big story this midweek. Thanks so much for watching.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
We'll be back here tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Have a good night, everyone.